I'm sorry to IBM for being a sad replacement for Nick, but he's after me. Hi everyone, my name is Alex and I'm the founder of the Goodnight Lamp, which may or may not be a thing that you may or may not have seen if you were there during Rick's talk, but it's something that I've been working on for a year and a half. I thought I would talk about what I've seen happen and what's happening now and what I think could change. Who in this room works for a large corporation? Raise your hands. Keep your hands up if your corporation has been interested in the Internet of Things 2 years ago. Yep. 4 years ago. I really want to know who you work for now. Okay, thanks. For me, it all started with the Arduino. The Arduino is now, I think, less recognized than it used to be before because the Raspberry Pi has been extremely successful in bringing itself to the masses. But I was a student at Interaction Design Institute Ivrea, which was a master's degree in northern Italy. And one of my professors was Massimo Banzi, and Massimo designed the Arduino board. My class was the first class to use it within an education context because I was studying design at the time. And we tried the first versions of the Arduino in a physical computing class, which is also the class that I took and ended up designing the Goodnight Lamp in. It didn't look like this, it looked like a regular lampshade, and I still have pictures online of the old design, which is terrible. And it was a time when connectivity was sort of this big unknown. I'd studied product design. I didn't really know any programmers. I didn't know how one did that bit where it connected to the internet bit. And if you don't know what the Goodnight Lamp is, the Goodnight Lamp is a family of internet-connected lamps. You have a big lamp and a little lamp, so you give the little lamps away to anyone around the world, and when you turn the big lamp on, the little ones turn on. So a very simple and easy way to indicate to a loved one that now's a good time to call, especially if they live in a different time zone, if you've moved away, you have a loved one with a long-distance relationship, or a grandparent who's living on their own, and maybe they use it to read before going to bed, so you can just tell they're around, they're okay. Call it minimum viable presence. And at the time, also the hardware was a little bit weird. Okay, the Arduino had just been introduced to my class, which meant there were 25 Arduinos in the world, in the wild. And so I graduated and started attending conferences around tech conferences, because I figured, hey, I'm doing something that's a little bit weird. I'd studied product design, but I've ended up being quite interested in this whole connecting the product design to the internet bit. And a lot of my peers were actually, in my master's degree especially, were programmers, were developers. My boyfriend at the time was the guy who ended up coining the term Silicon Roundabout. And so entire worlds were kind of shifting slowly. And at the time it was called Blogjects, which was hilarious because it was all about blogging back then. And so if you go back to Julian Bleeker's work, who is now working for Nokia, I think he's still working for Nokia, he was going on about how objects would blog and pigeons would blog because we'd put some RFID tags on pigeons, because it was all about RFID at the time as well. It's a small group of people who would meet at these conferences in LIFT 2006. There was 25 of us. Robert Scoble was in a corner of the room, obsessed with his tablet, because he had a tablet, and that was cool. And all of us were kind of talking about this topic around, well, connectivity is going everywhere. What does it mean? But there's only a very small, pool of us. I moved to the UK in 2007. I started Tinker London, which was the first distributor of the Arduino in the UK. I was moving over because Matt, my boyfriend, was living here, and Massimo and I had been talking for years about doing something together. And the Arduino was being made, was being distributed. SparkFun was distributing it in the US, and there was no one here. So I thought, hey, I can send some things from my flat to the post, and I can send people this platform. People didn't know what this was, why they would want it, but a few people who were on the Arduino forums super early on started buying them. And so it went from me sending Arduinos from my flat in Hackney for the first 6 months to me hiring a young man who was just in between, kind of in a gap year, to help me, to us growing a studio where we had 12 people and ran fantastic projects for large corporations around connected products. Some of my former clients, I think, are in the room. And then skip kind of several years later, and there's loads of us now. There's loads of us. There's so many of us that I can fill a room with the types of things that people are making and the products that people are commercializing and the things that people are making around this space. And that is, you know, kind of day and night from 4 years ago, and that's fantastic. And in 2011, I was a consultant. At that point, I closed down Tinker end of 2010, because if you run a consultancy, you know what I mean. Cash flow is king, and cash flow was not great. And I decided, hey, there's this, you know, this idea that I had when I was a student. It still makes sense. People still respond to it really well. Maybe this is something I should put my efforts into. And so with the announcement of David Cameron that we were actually not in Silicon Roundabout, but in Tech City, I thought, oh, fuck it, let's just do this. And Matt had just announced Little Printer, I think in January or so that year, something like that. I'm looking at Andy. Yeah, February. Makey Lab, who were in my building, who make 3D printed dolls, had also received funding from a Tech City fund that the UK government had just given out. Same-ish kind of time. And I thought, okay, I have to do this because my friends and the people who are immediately around me are doing this, and so I have to jump too. And 2 years later, it's again unrecognizable because there's you good people who are here who work for extremely large businesses who are both coming from the software side of things, the hub side of things, the things side of things, and everybody's trying to work together and trying to talk together and trying to push the conversation forward, trying to make business happen, trying to make companies happen, and that's extremely exciting. So how long do I have? He doesn't even care. Like 5 minutes, sort of?
You could do more, but
okay.
5 would be great.
Okay, fine. So things that I think are changing or things that I think could change. I think things that are changing tremendously, and this is why I'm really pleased that some of you are from large corporates, are in the room, is that the relationship between a startup in this space and a large corporate is extremely difficult, because the large corporate has traditionally a set of services with a set of clients, and they're looking to this space and trying to figure out, okay, well, you know, what's our angle? The startup is trying to build their own assets, their own IP that they can get investment for and can grow a business around. And so there's this tension and there's this friction between the two, where the startup, so for example, you know, Goodnight Lamp has been approached by many businesses offering platform products, going, hey, why don't you build it on our platform? And for me, that's the death of me, because if I don't even own, you know, never mind I'm making a thing, which is hard to protect because we know the world we live in, but I don't even own my own software. That's like saying I don't really have a company, and that's saying I have a project. And that's very dangerous for me as a startup. The things that are changing in that space are things like something I actually got involved in because I actually wanted to change the shape of the relationship between big business and small startup. So British Gas came to me, and they're not the most popular company these days, but they came to me saying, hey, we want a hack day. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't know what you mean by a hack day, and it doesn't really matter because actually what you have is money, and what a startup wants is money. And so I organized with them an event called Connecting Homes, where we showcased 25, 26 startups that were in the home energy sector only. I didn't even know that there were, you know, how many we were going to get, and we ended up getting over 60 people applying or 60 companies applying, and we showcased 26 of them. And they got a cash prize, like the top 3 got cash. Not equity, not IP, nothing, just money. And that is extremely convenient. Doesn't mean it has to be a large amount of money, but it's large enough for a startup to do practical things and to actually get them through the next 3-4 months. And I think some of the startups that presented are in this room. There's at least 2 of them, or 4 of them maybe. And again, the pool of talent around, the pool of ideas around the space is still small-ish, but it's growing. And it's growing because people have more and more access to the types of tools that they need in order to make businesses and make startups. So the role of big business is to encourage that practically. The things that I think have fundamentally changed, I think crowdfunding has completely changed the landscape of how people are able to, get a runway, as it were, that is a longer runway. In our case, we went through a crowdfunding campaign in January because we were going to CES. Please shoot me next time I want to do that. January is not a good month to raise funds. People do not have any money in January because they have just gone through Christmas time. And so we had a fantastic roller coaster ride. We raised £37,000 over an objective of £360,000. Again, shoot me next time I want to do that. But people are now finding it so much easier to have access to a lot of capital extremely quickly, have a user base, and have a conversation with end customers while skipping over entire conversations with angel investors, seed investors, whoever they might have to deal with initially. There are good things about that, there are bad things about that, we don't have the time. And I think also the greatest things about what's happening that is changing is I said this on Twitter the other day. I said, in the IoT Gold Rush, the people making money are the people selling shovels. And what I mean by that is that there is a lot more value being and talked about here as well around the platforms rather than the things themselves, because the things themselves still feel really risky somehow and really dangerous somehow. But the people selling the shovels are all of different sizes entirely. So you have people like BirdCloud, you have people like ThingWorks, they're slightly larger, you have the IBMs and the Ciscos, and everybody is able to play on a level playing field, which is extremely important. There's no real clear winners right now because all the balls are in the air. And that's exciting, and that's really, really great. Things that could change extremely quickly. I think there's still a really big gap between someone who wants to do something and can do something practically. I think that will change as we sort of get better at communicating exactly what it is what we do. Changing the national curriculum would be nice, but I don't think anybody's equipped to do that in this room particularly. I was bitching about this the other day as well, which is kind of moving beyond Logo, the programming language for kids, where you say it was invented in 1967, and we haven't really evolved from teaching children about electronics in that manner. So she has, because she's doing Code Club, and she's going, I have. And you should talk to Linda about that. But there are so many crowdfunding projects that are hardware-based that don't. That are like, oh, move a thing here and then move it to the left, and that's all. And there's a conversation that needs to happen between Code Club and the people doing that. Things that could change retail, the retail space. If you work in retail, please come and talk to me. I could fill your entire, store with things like what's in there. And if you haven't had a chance to look at what's in there, we're at Workshop, which is basically a pop-up shop that I run from my office 2 days out of the week since August, and we're closing in Christmas. Please buy all the things. They're really nice things.
Buy all the things!
Buy all the things. I don't want to go back to the office with them. And then things that could change 3 out of 3. People talk about this sort of, and I really don't buy this simply because I love this country and I think that you guys are amazing. I'm Canadian, by the way, I'm not American. Sorry. I think that there's a misunderstanding about what the UK is capable of in terms of consumer products. So I've heard this before once, and I really hated it, this idea that the UK builds it, but the US commercializes it, or makes it desirable commercially, and I think that's bullshit. And I think that what is happening now, so the best example of that is Kando, which is this US-based project that has basically packaged up Raspberry Pi a Raspberry Pi experience to make it extremely, consumer friendly. And so in like 3 days, they got $1 million. And I'm thinking like, I'm sorry, what? The Raspberry Pi is made in Wales and it's a British product. Why couldn't we do that? We have the talent, we have the creative industries in London, certainly. We have the packaging capabilities. Why didn't it come out of here? And so I think that's something that really, and really also is reflected in the investment community. I could talk about this at great lengths, but insult everybody probably, so I won't. But there's an attitude that if it's not a B2B play, it's not as attractive as if it was a B2C play. And I don't hear that sort of fear in US investors. US investors are like, yes, let's do it. And I would love to have those conversations here. Because if you don't have the things, you're not doing the Internet of Things, really. Yes, so 3 super free startup ideas. If anybody wants to do this, this is going to be like amazing and will like change the world. Drag and drop patent writing. Someone do that? Someone just create a super stupid way of writing a fucking patent, because if I had done that, I would have been in a very different position than I am now. But I didn't know, I didn't have the IP lawyer, I didn't have the money for the IP lawyer. This is dumb. This is something that should be done. Engineering skills, making that super cheap. I don't know how you do that. I don't know if you hire the right people or you just get a lot of people or you outsource the goddamn thing. And then certification. I think Adrian, who's in the room, where's Adrian? Where's Adrian? Over there. Talked to him about it. We had a long rant about it, but basically, if lots of us are trying to certify our products, surely we should be able to get bulk deals about this stuff. I've been asked by the government to try to create a center of excellence for connected devices. So if you have ideas about what you think that means, or you want to play and you're a big corporate, or you're in software, hardware, I don't care. Come and talk to me. Thank you very, very much.